there, friends, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. I'm Kyle, and Wednesday Whimsy is a short show I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game topic, a top 10, or some other topic that happens to have crossed my mind, usually board game related, usually fun for me, usually positive and full of energy, or at least whatever energy I can muster late on a Wednesday evening. This week, we're talking about a game. So, I'll give you, if you looked at my top 100 list, you'll notice that two-player games, sort of head-to-head two-player games, are really my jam. I mean, that is what I love. My number one game, Summoner Wars, two-player head-to-head. Twilight Struggle right up there. I love when the games are asymmetric. They don't have to be, but, it's nice when they are. There's a lot of, it's sort of this two-player world of games is just the pool I love to swim in. And so whenever I hear about a new game that kind of fits that mold, I'm always really excited to try it out. Now, some games like 1989, Twilight Struggle, that kind of thing, those games have been fantastic. I've loved them. Other games, like there was one about Martin Luther, can't remember its name anymore, but it was from Stronghold. It turned out to be a disappointment. And so I'm talking today about, I'm mentioning that because of what I'm talking about today. And that is a brand new game called Doubt is Our Product. So we're going to talk about the normal topics we do on Wednesday Whimsy. And then I'm going to tell you what I think about the game and areas that it did well, areas that it did less well, and we'll see what we think about it. So let's get started. So what is this game about? Well, the game is a two-player asymmetric game where one person is the tobacco industry and is trying to market and sell tobacco products, primarily cigarettes, we assume, to people of all age groups and ethnic groups. An interesting mechanism in the game is if you sort of get kids hooked on cigarettes, they give you money for the rest of their lives. I'm laughing about that. It's kind of a sad theme, but that's what you're doing, right? That's your goal is to make money by selling cigarettes. And the other player is going to play basically the anti-tobacco movement. And they are using their limited resources to try and basically take down what the tobacco industry has built. And they are, trying to, use after school specials to teach kids not to smoke, or institute government reforms that will lead to restrictions on what tobacco companies can do, maybe lawsuits, that kind of thing. Basically the things that really happen, smoking bans, everything like that. That's kind of their goal. Now, I'm not able to show you a lot of pictures in this game because there's not really anything online. It's on Board Game Geek, there's just the cover photo. And so I'm going to open the box today and kind of tell a little bit about it. But let's talk about how it works. So in Doubt is Our Product, you're really playing two different games. That's kind of the hook of this game. The tobacco company is essentially playing a deck building game. And so you have some cards that are kind of always available, and then some that are only going to be available, they're sort of randomly chosen in the game. And every turn, you must play a card, and you must purchase a card. So, I don't know. I have here, let's say mascots, Joe Camel. So I have this card, and this here means, so it has two different ways it can be played. It has a cost up here. So I have to pay 4 value. And so I'd have to discard 4 other, I'd have to pay, to play this action up here, I'd have to pay 3 value. And so I'll discard cards with this sort of number up here that equal 3 or higher. And then I could put this card into play. And this is marketing, and it's marketing, this sort of blank box means marketing to kids. So I'm selling to kids on the joys of smoking, which, thematically makes sense with Joe Camel type character. And then there's going to be this line of cards, and I have to use some of my cards to buy one. If ever I can't do that, I lose the game. And it's really just a deck building game. So you're going to, you draw your hand of 5 cards, You're going to play or discard and use what you want. They go into your discard pile, and then you'll go on to the next round, shuffle up a new hand. Eventually, you're going to have a reshuffle. And on a reshuffle turn, you're going to score. And the way that scoring works is, so the way the tobacco company wins is it gets $70, or it gets sort of 3 big reshuffle turns. And so you've got this board here, and you'll see that, if the children here are smoking, basically, you're going, so with old people, you're going to score $1 for each one. With middle-aged people, you're going to discard 2/3 of them because of death, and then score $1 for each one. For adults, you discard half, $1 for each one, and for kids, you just score $1 for each one. And then everything's going to move over. So the elderly people are going to die off, and everyone else is going to move up. So you're going to score your money that way. There might be bonuses from cards. And then you rinse and repeat. Now, the other player is the anti-smoking movement, and they have this board here, which is going to have cards on it, and the cards are going to let you do certain actions. They have a cost down here, and the cards have a variety of different effects. And what this player is doing is building kind of a tableau. You won't have many cards in your hand. Instead, you'll have cards out on the board, and they will have symbols. And then when you play cards with matching symbols, you get to take those resources. And then eventually, when you buy cards from this board here, you're going to get to do the action that it specifies. And those actions are generally going to be either get more stuff, and you're going to use kind of the symbols that are face up on the cards on the table. You might be able to go in and remove some doubt. So basically, you're removing people from the tobacco company's sort of smoker boxes, and the tobacco company can spread doubt to kind of protect those. But ultimately, your goal is to remove as many people out of there as possible, because that directly impacts and slows down what the tobacco company is going to be doing. And then the other thing you're going to do is there are these goals, these kind of public goals, and that's how you win as the movement is, there's going to be these goals out there, and you're going to try and get a resource for them and put them out there. And if you get 10 points by completing goals, you win. And the goals are also going to, ban certain actions for the tobacco company, or make things more difficult, or make things easier for you. And so you're kind of trying to do that, but you have really only one choice per turn. The tobacco company has a lot more flexibility. The movement is dealing with more limited resources. And you're going to keep going until somebody wins the game. And that's it. So let's talk about what makes the game special. And I want to be really fair to this game, because I'm going to tell you in a moment that I don't really like this game very much. But I do want to talk about what I think the game does very well. I think the asymmetric sides is almost it's almost brilliant. The sort of separate games you're playing, it means, you're really feeling like you're doing something different. And I think the thematic integration of some of the rules, like, the kids becoming adults and still smoking and still giving you money, but some people dying, and then becoming middle-aged, but more people die. I mean, I think that thematically is great. I think sort of placing your doubt, sort of spreading doubt about, tobacco research, to sort of, confuse people, to make them more difficult to influence. I think that's very interesting. I like kind of the way that the movement player is influencing sort of indirectly. I mean, they're playing their own game, but what they do is ultimately trying to break down what the tobacco company is doing. They want to have them have less and less. And you got to do it as quickly as possible, but you have limited resources. I think that's fantastic. I think there's a lot of fantastic ideas in this game. What I don't like about the game, where's the but, is really everything else. So I want to start by talking about the production quality of this game. It is really very, very bad. I've held up these boards here. It's this kind of a paper printed on cloth or something. It's very unsatisfactory to hold. It's not a playmat. The card quality, they're kind of thin cards, and they kind of feel like the ink is going to rub off on your fingers. And there is a smell about these cards that is just unholy. The first time you open them up, I mean, I almost wish they smelled like cigarettes because they smell just, there's this very strong chemical smell, and it's still there. I've had this game for more than a month, and the chemical smell is still there. You have tokens in the game, which are, kind of clip arty icons. They don't look great, and they're never drawn randomly, yet they're all only printed on one side, which means that you have to sort these things, right? You got to bag them up separately, or else it's just going to be a pile of face up and face down tokens. It's just, why? I mean, that would have been a very simple choice that wasn't made. It wouldn't have cost really any extra, and it would have made the game so much more playable. Let's talk about the tobacco company's components, and they have an interesting thing. They have to get $70. The game comes with exactly $70 worth of tokens. I mean, that means you're going to be making change constantly. You've got to have a huge pile of ones at some point. You can't just turn that in for a 10, where you can early on, but once you get sort of later in the game, you still have to have a huge stack of ones. There's no reason for that. There's not anything from the gameplay that I can see where we would need the dollars to total exactly 70. I mean, I guess you can spend some of your dollars to make things more expensive, but that doesn't feel like it's an intentional gameplay mechanism to keep it that limited. And I mean, just there's 1s, 3s, and 5s, I think, and there's just not enough of any of them. And I guess there's exactly enough, to be fair. But I don't know why. And it's enough of an annoyance because it's going to come up every time you play the game. Let's talk about the rule book. So the rule book for the game is not great. At least it's printed in color, but it's right here. And you have the company rules on one side, and then printed on the back are the movement rules, and they kind of meet in the middle. Awful. I mean, why not give me 2 rule books? It wouldn't have been really anything different in terms of production value if they'd been printed in separate books. But you're going to have to be looking at these things, and I just don't know why. It's very annoying to have it there. The rules are also very unclear on some points. Some points are never explained. The company player in particular has this action where they're putting cards out. You can play your card kind of for its benefit, or you can kind of put it out in this tableau and then later on activate it. But it goes away at the reshuffle, and you're only going to have maybe 4 rounds. So it almost never makes sense to activate it, and you have to have very specific symbols to do that. It feels like you want to be able to build combos, but the combos never really come together. And then I think, the biggest sin for me, this game really needed a player aid, right? There's no easy reference for what people can do. Yet, the game comes with an unnumbered page. I don't know how many pages it is, but 20 pages or so of supplemental materials like settlements, tobacco settlement documents, or some sort of information about what the design philosophy was. I don't know, some random certificate. It's just, all this useless material for the gameplay. It could be interesting, but most people aren't going to buy this as a research project. But we have this essentially useless information and no player aid. That just is mind-boggling. 1 for each player, saying, the phases of the turn, what all the symbols do, how you win. It would have been easy, but it's not here. Box, super thin. It definitely feels homemade. And now let's talk about the price. Now, I don't always talk about price with games. I don't know that price is usually a fair thing to evaluate games on, because value will come, is individual. But sometimes the price to production ratio is so skewed that it needs to be talked about. This game is like $70 or $75. I think I got $5 off, so it was $70 for me. $70 for essentially somebody's prototype. It is ridiculously overpriced. I mean, I might I probably should have bought cigarettes with the money, and I don't smoke. It is a very expensive game, and the quality of the components is so low that it boggles the mind. I mean, you could buy something like Massive Darkness for not much more than that, which is a game with, big plastic minis, deep gameplay, lots of different choices, great rules, lots of good things. Or you could take those same $70 and buy basically a prototype. And I've said this before and I will always say it. This game makes Food Chain Magnate look like a deluxe edition. It is so bad that I just don't get it. Also, the website for the publisher, they list this thing as highly solo suitable, but there are no solo rules. Maybe they mean you can kind of play it like, play both sides, basically play the game with yourself, but that's not solo suitable. That's just trying to get through the rules. It's a poor production. And I think what the game really needed was some development. I think it needed to go through kind of a big publisher, maybe some more playtesting. I don't know how balanced the sides are. I've never seen the company win in the times I've played it, or even come close. And maybe that's trying to teach a lesson. I don't know, but I don't know how balanced it is, and I can't speak to balance. Right? I'm not qualified. I haven't played enough times to think about that, but I just noticed that the industry is functionally much easier to play and feels much stronger. So I think it could have used a little bit more playtesting. It could have been used some playtesting with people, blind testing, where people had to read the rules and figure it out themselves, because it is not easy. This rule book is really bad. It could have used some development. Someone to sort of say, hey, let's put a player aid in. Let's maybe not include all those supplemental materials, or include them, right? If somebody cares, that's fine, but those could be on the website. Let's print the tokens on both sides. Let's use higher quality cardboard. Let's make sure our things don't stink. Let's make sure that that everything feels like a $70 game rather than somebody's prototype. So I think this game, where do I come out on it? I think it has potential, right? I think the core idea here is excellent. I think the development, I think if it had been a little more developed, if some other people other than the designer and her family had played this, I think maybe some feedback could have been incorporated that would have made the game what it promises to be, because the promise is there. But for me, as it currently sits, it's a 4 out of 10 for me. This is not a game I want to play. It's not a game I want to teach. It's not a game I want to open, especially because it smells terrible. I don't know what board gamer would like this. And you might say, well, the publisher, I guess, tries to be a war game publisher, but that's not an excuse anymore. There are nice games of all styles, and just saying, well, we're trying to make it look like this, that's really a cop out. It's a 4 out of 10 for me. I do not recommend it. In fact, I recommend you not play it. I recommend you not buy it. Unless it sounds like it's going to be something that you will play hundreds of times because you have a deep connection to the theme, or because it sounds so interesting that you're willing to go through and do some of the component upgrading and some house ruling, and maybe make some player aids and sort of do what the publisher should have done themselves for them. And in that case, maybe you might like it. But I still don't know if it's balanced. I still think there are extra mechanisms that could have been stripped away. I still just I don't think the game is very fun. And that makes me really sad, because this is a game I wanted to become my favorite game of the year. I wanted this to be one of my top 10 games of all time, because I love the theme, I love the idea, I love the concept. But it let me down. So there you have it. Again, I don't like to be negative in reviews and discussions on my shows, because I like talking about things that I like. But I felt like this one, there aren't really any videos about it except like the designer talking about the theme. And I thought, well, let's put one out there, sort of get some perspective so that people don't maybe fall into the trap that I did. And also talk about, the things I did like about it and the areas where it really could have been better. Anyway, that's Doubt is Our Product, a game I doubt I could recommend. A game that, had a lot of promise but let me down. And that's it. And excuse me. That's it for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy as well. I'm going to end it here, but I will be back next week with another episode. I don't know what I'm talking about yet. Probably something board game related. It usually is. And until then, I'm going to wish you safe travels, courage when you need it, and I'll look forward to seeing you back next week for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.